So, hello everyone. This is Mrs. Archana Pradeshni, Assistant Professor in the Department of Information Science, Canberra Engineering College. So, we are studying the part 2 of Module 4 under Operating System course. In this course, what we are seeing is some of the basic file concepts. The basic file concepts followed by access methods, directory and directory structure. We are going to see about what is sharing, mounting and protection. So this is the index that is being covered. First, let's see about the what exactly is a file and how do we name the file, what are the types of file, and what are the how do you define the attributes of the file, and followed by access methods. So different kinds of access methods are laid out here, and next we are going to see what a directory is and the different levels of directory, maybe single or hierarchical level directory scheme, so on. And then some introduction to mounting and sharing, and also how the protection can be served for a file. So main objectives are to explain the function of the file system, to describe the interfaces to the file system, how do you interact with the file system, that is given here, and what are the objectives the file system provide, what are the functionalities that these files provide will also be discussed, and also the design trade-offs. That means different kinds of design or directory levels are possible in case of a directory hierarchy, and there is also the concept related to sharing and protection of these file systems. So first of all, what exactly is a file? So file is, they are nothing but the building blocks of an operating system, and the permanent storage of information and data can be called as a file, and these will consist of contiguous logical address spaces. So file provides an easy means of information sharing, and however, yeah, as we know, a programmer, what they do is they prepare the program in terms of a file, and the file represents programs and data. So this, what are the types of the files, what are the different types of files? So the files, types of data which are stored in files, the types of data may be numeric, or it may be object code, or it may be a character type of file, or it may be a binary type of file, or it may be a programmable type of file. And this, there is a specific owner who creates this file, and he's called as the file creator. So the file names, there are again different types of the files like text file, source file, executable file and object file. So what are the types, before talking about the types of the files like ordinal file, directory file or character device file or block device file, let's see what are the attributes of a file. So one of the characteristics of a file is a set of the file attributes which gives the operating system more information about the file, like how it is intended to be used. So these are the file attributes, that is file name. So this gives this is very human readable form, and this gives information which can be read by the human. And whenever a file is created by the user, it is the task of the operating system to assign a unique identification number for such kind of file. So the symbolic file name is the only information which is kept in a human readable form. The second kind of file attribute is identifier. So what is this identifier? So this is like uh, a unique tag which is a number which identifies a file. So this number, is it readable by human? No. We do not know what is the identifier which is associated for a particular file. Next attribute is the type. So this information is needed for the systems that support different types. So in case of text file, we need to know how it could be opened, how it is readable. So that's why this type is defined as an attribute of. And the fourth kind of attribute is the location. So what is this location? This is like a pointer to the device. Where exactly the file is stored? Is it stored in this? Is it stored in the secondary storage device, or is it stored somewhere in different location, or is it in the network? So all this location is information is like a pointer to a device, and the actual location of the files are revealed here. So next information related to file attributes is the size. So this size is measured in bits or bytes and gives an idea about the current size of the file. And possibly the maximum size will be specified here in this parameter. And the next kind of attributes which are available with files are protection. So protection tells you who is able to read and who is able to write the file. Okay, so that kind of protection bits in terms of permissions can be provided. So attributes like protection, password, creator, owner, those provide the protection. Who supposed to read, who are supposed to write data to the file. So that is stored in this protection. So next is the time, date, and user identification. User identification. So this information may be kept for creation or last modification and last use. Okay, so why exactly this is required? So we can identify the date that the file was created, the time when the file was created, the time when the user has modified the file, or who has modified the file. That version we can get to know what is the previous version of the file, which can be used later. And this is just like a track or a monitoring purpose, or it can be used for security issues. So this is the example of file attributes which are laid in Windows system. So we can observe that we can identify the date modified for a particular file, and what is the size. The protection can also be laid in terms of the size of the file, and what is the time that this file was created, and what is the date. This is another possibility. Whether it is read only or the permissions are given to this file in terms of read only, or whether it's hidden, and when it was accessed, when it is created, all this kind of protection information is clearly available to files. So these are the file operations. As you know, file is an abstract data type, and to define a file properly we need to consider the operations that are performed on a file. The operating system can provide various system calls in order to create or write or read, delete or close or reposition in the file. So all these operations require that the directory structure must be first searched for the target file. The first operation is creating a file. So two steps are necessary to create a file. First, the space in the file system must be found. So the operating system must determine whether before creating, whether there is any space in the particular file system, or else you may get a warning that you must have encountered regarding the space. There is no space in the file system. Okay, that is the first step. It must determine whether there is any space in the file system. The second thing is that the entry for the new file must be made in the directory. That is, the new file entry is made in the directory. So the directory entry records the name of the file and the location in the file system and any other information. The next operation is writing to a file. So to perform write operation on the file name and the data is required. And given the name of the file, the system searches the directory to find the location of the file. And the system must also keep a write pointer to the location in the file where the next write is possible. And this write pointer must keep on updating when the writing is made to a file. The write pointer position is at middle of the file or at the end of the file. Okay, and the write pointer will be updated when the writing of the file is completed. Next operation is to there are possibilities that may close the file. Or before closing, let's say about the read operation. So to read from a file, we use a system call that specifies the name of the file and where the next block of the file should be put. The process reads all or some portion of the data in the file. So there is a read system call which is used for reading a file. And for reading a file, the name and position of the memory is specified. There is also a read pointer which is kept onto the file for the next read operation, and it will be updated after the completion. So so far we have discussed about the create operation, write operation, read operation. Next we'll see how to remove the file from the file system. So this is achieved by delete operation. So to delete a file, we search the directory for the name file. So having found the directory entry, so directory search with the name of the file and the file will be deleted. The deleting means the space is made free from disk and memory. So what does the operating system do is it will remove the file from the directory entry, and this free space again can be used by some other file. Then next operation that can be performed is reposition. The reposition means uh, we can move the uh, pointer to some position in the file. So for this, the directory search for the appropriate entry and the current file position is set to a given value. Let's say we are specifying that this particular data has to be read from this position. So that value is given, and reposition with the file does not involve any IO, right? So that's why it is called as a file seek. And the other operations that are possible are open file, append to a file, get and set attributes for a file, truncate a file. Okay, let's say about truncating file. Truncating a file means that the user may want to erase the contents of the file but keep the attributes. So here, rather than forcing the user to delete the file and then recreate it, this function allows all the attributes to remain unchanged except for the file length, but it lets the file to be reset to length 0. So next we'll see about open files. So for in this we have got what is this open file. Before performing any operation on the file, it is necessary to open the file in a specific mode, right? So the operating system will keep. We have also got an open system call for this purpose, and the operating system will keep a small table containing the information about open file. So that table is called as the open file table. And when the file operation is requested, the file is specified with an index into the table. When the file is no longer actively used, it will be closed by the process and the operating system will remove the entry in the open file table. And there is another data which is required for open file is file open count. So in this see, as you know, once a file is opened by one process, another process executing an open call simply results in new entry being added to the process open file table. So typically the open file table also has got open count associated with each file. So this indicates the number of processes that have the file open. And with the help of the close function, this decreases the count. So when the open count reaches 0, the file is no longer used, and the entry is removed from the open file table. So the file will be open based on some system call, that is open system call, and open operation takes the file name and searches the directory, copying the directory entry into the open file table. So open call can have can accept the access mode information like read only, read write, or append only, and this mode is checked. So in which mode the open operation has to happen. So there is some permissions which are set for that file, like it should be read only or write or append only. So based on that mode, the particular file is opened for by the process. And this open system call will typically return an pointer to the entry in the open file table. So the piece of information which are associated with the open file are: one is open file table, one is a file open count, which that is as the files are closed, the operating system must reuse this open file table entry. And because we know multiple processes may open the file, the system must wait for the last file to close. So there is a counter, and this counter keeps tracks of number of opens and closes. So when it reaches 0, this the system can then come to know it can remove the entry. So the next information which are available for associated with open files are the file pointer. So on the systems that do not include any offset as a part of read and write system calls, the system must track the last read write location as a current file position pointer. The last read and write operation is tracked by a pointer. This is nothing but the file pointer, and this pointer will be unique to each process which are operating on the file, and therefore must be kept separate from the disk at so apart from this information, we are going to have another information, that is this location of the file. So most of the operations require the system to modify the data within the file. So the information needed to locate the file on the disk will be kept in the memory in order to have it read from the disk. So that is again a quite complex operation. And the next attribute or the information which are associated with open files are access rights. So each process opens a file in a particular access mode, whether it may be allowed to read or write. So that kind of permission is defined for each file, and so this information is stored on per process table. So these are some of the uh, locking mechanisms which are provided by the operating system. So this is similar to reader and writer locks. We have got shared lock and exclusive lock. The shared lock means that all the shared information, the lock is acquired, which is similar to a reader lock. Several processes can access the same data. The shared data can be accessed by several processes concurrently. Whereas if the several writers are writing to update on the same information or write toward data, so there will be an exclusive block which is enforced. And there is another type of lock called as mandatory lock and advisory lock. So mandatory lock is that the access is denied depending upon the locks held and locks requested. And there is advisory lock, where the process can find the status of the lock and decide what to do. So this is a file locking example in Java API. And here we have set the exclusive lock to false and the shared lock is set to true. We find that shared lock is null and exclusive lock is null set initially. And the name of the file is file.txt in read write mode. So both chances are possible. One is read and write operation. First, it logs the first half of the file as a part of the exclusive mode. And in the exclusive lock, the lock is acquired and the lock will be set to the exclusive lock on if any process tries to modify the data. And once the after the first process has completed writing onto the data, it can release the lock. And this is the implementation of shared lock. Shared lock wherein the lock is set. This will lock the second half. We can observe length by 2 plus 1. So that will be the second half. Second half of the data is shared lock. We are setting it to a shared lock. Now to read the it can any process can directly read the data. There is no specific log set, and after the process any process read the data can release the log. So these are the file types and the name along with the extension. The file types can be executable log, or it can be an object type of file, or it may be a source file or a batch file, or it may be a text file or a word processor, or it may be a library file or print or view, anything. So whenever we design a file system, so we must consider whether the operating system should recognize and support the file types, right? So for this we have to know what are the file types. So a common technique for implementing the file type is to include the type as a part of the file name, and the name is split into two parts. One is name and extension. That's why we give whenever we save a particular file, we'll give the name of the file followed by extension. In this way, the user and the operating system can tell from the name what type of the file is it, right? Uh, in case of a text file, we denote the file name .txt. Likewise, for an executable file, we denote the file name .exe file. So, based on the extension, the operating system clearly comes to know what type of data it contains and what type of file is it and how it could be opened. So, you can observe that the executable file have got these extensions exe, comp, win, and the function is ready to run. Directly it is executable file. And in case of object file, which is in the form of .obj or O, it is a compiled version of the program, or it will be in a machine language. The source code may be in high level languages like C or Java. The extension will be .c or .cc or .java or .asm for assembly level language. Uh, and it is the source code which we can understand. The batch kind of files, or these are the commands to the command interpreter. And text files will be in .txt or .doc. So this will be textual data or data commands. So file produced by the word processor has the word processor name as its creator. So whenever the user opens that file by double clicking the mouse, the word processor is invoked automatically and the file will be loaded and ready to be edited. So this with the help of saving of this file as in terms of extension, the operating system will come to know what type of data that file has got and open in a specific mode based on the permissions. Next is the library file. So library file will be in .lib form or .dll form, which contains a library of routines for the programmers. Like that, we have got still more archive and multimedia type of files. So next is the file structure. So as you know, the files can be can be stored in simple record structure. So what exactly is this file structure is? It is represented by a field, record, file, and a database. So there will be a byte sequence, or it may be a record sequence. So structure may be in terms of bytes or in terms of records. And when we say record, it can be a simple record structure or it may be a complex structure. Okay, in a simple record structure, it may consist of lines, or the lines may be fixed length or variable length. In case of complex structures, it may be a formatted document or a load file. So, the operating system may require that an executable file have a specific structure so that it can determine where in the memory to load the file and what is the location of the first instruction. Okay, so this is very important for the operating system. The operating system decide what structure has to be used for the particular file. So some of the operating systems, what they do is they define the minimum number of file structures, and the scheme provides maximum flexibility. So some of the operating system supports minimum number of file structures, and it expects files to contain two parts, it is resource fork and data fork, wherein the resource fork contains information of interest to the user. So for instance, it may hold the labels of any buttons displayed by the program. So this is very important for the operating system in order to and this will be done directly by the operating system to say or how is the structure relate on different systems. So these are the access methods. The first access methods that are possible for in a file is a sequential access method. So what do these access method define? So as you know, information and data will be kept in files, and files will be either stored in a secondary storage device. And when this information is to be used, it has to be accessed and brought into main memory. So file access method defines the way the processes read and write the files. So there are several access methods. One is sequential, direct, and index sequential access method. In the first method, which is a sequential access method, so this is very simple method. So all the information in the file is accessed sequentially, one record after the other. So in this method, the process could read all the records in the file in order starting at the beginning, and it cannot skip any records. So these are the possible operations may be done, that is rewind, read, or write. And the batch kind of applications uses this kind of sequential files. And usually compiler and editor, they usually access the files in this method, sequential, right? How does the program compile? Step by step, so in order. So what are the drawbacks of this kind of sequential method is it provides poor performance, and more efficient search technique is required. So in the sequential access, it works like this: read the next operation, write the next operation, and reset. So there will not be no read after last write. So there will not be any updations. So it won't go in a different order, it will work sequentially. And the next case, that is a direct method, which is a relative access method, or it's called as a random access method. So in this direct access method, this allows the user to position the read write mark before reading and writing. Like read n, this particular position, write n, and position to n. Read next, write next, read write n. So a random access is possible. So in this direct access file method, it provides accessing the records directly and is based on hard disk, that is the direct access device. So there is a hashing function that will be used in the direct access method. So based on the hash value, it is going to access a particular record. So there will be no restriction on the order of reading or writing in case of direct access. So this is the simulation of sequential access on direct access file. So sequential access is saying as reset, the implementation of direct access will be 0. In the sequential access, if we give the command as read next, it is going to read CP, and CP will be incremented to 1. Directly in terms of numbers, it is going to access. And write next, it is going to write that data and increment the pointer. So this is the simulation of sequential access on the direct access file. So you have seen other access methods like sequential access and direct access. Sequential access wherein the information in the file will be processed in order and it will be record by record. Okay, in direct access methods, it is a kind of relative access. Okay, it is a kind of relative access, and the file may be of fixed length record and it allows the program to read and record rapidly, but not any particular order. Whereas this kind of direct access method is based on disk model where it allows random access. So for direct access, the file will be viewed as numbered sequence of blocks or records, and direct access file allows arbitrary blocks to be read or written. That is, we may read block 14 and then read block 53 and so on. Usually databases are of this kind of direct access methods. So we have also seen the operations like read and read next, write and rather than write next for a direct access method. Apart from these methods, so all these methods are built on top of the direct access methods. These methods, they involve the construction of an index for the file. The index is like an index in the back of the book and it contains pointers to various blocks. And for example, I can say to find a record in a file, you must search for the index and then use the pointer to access the file directly and to find the desired record. So, for example, we can have retail price might list the universal product codes, and each record consists of 10-digit UPC and a 6-digit price for a 16-byte record, let's say. And there is a file of 1,20,000 records which would occupy 2,000 blocks. So by keeping the file sorted by UPC, we know UPC means universal product codes. So based on this, the sorting happens, and the index would have 2000. Since there are 2000 blocks, you can have index would have 2000 entries of 10 digits each. From this, we would know exactly which block would contain the desired record. So if the with a large files, the index file itself may become too large to keep it in memory. One solution is to create an index for the index file, where we have got the primary index, and this primary index file would contain pointers to the secondary index file like that, and which would point to the actual data item. So we have got primary index file, then second index file, wherein primary index is like a pointer to the second index file, and the second index file is like a pointer to the actual data. Let's say we have got IBM's index sequential access method, wherein this uses a small master index which points to the disk blocks of a secondary index. The secondary block point to the actual file blocks. The file will be kept sorted on a defined key. So in order to find a particular item, we may first make a binary search of the master index, because as we know, master index points to the disk blocks of the secondary index which contain the actual data. So to find a particular item, we make a binary search of the master index, and which provides the block number of the secondary index. This block will be read in, and again binary search is used to find the block containing the desired record. So this is the example of index and relative files. So as we know, there is an index file and a relative file. Okay, and here the block is it's like a master block, master index. This is like a master index file which contains a pointer to the secondary index. Secondary index contains the actual data, or the relative file, you can say it's a secondary index contains the actual data, actual file blocks. To find the particular item, we make a binary search, like we try to divide it in the middle, because based on the it is arranged in the ascending order of their names, last names, and we can see that when we apply the binary search, we are going to find the item almost at the rightmost portion, or the down below the block. So Smith is found in the first half, or you can say rightmost portion of the block, and that again will be used to provide the to find a particular item. We make a binary search of the master index, that is the index file, and this provides the block number of the secondary index. So this block number is read in, like Smith, John, social security, age, this is read in, and again binary search is used to find the block containing the desired record. So this block is searched sequentially. In this way, any record can be located from its key by two direct access methods. Next is the directory structure. So what is the directory structure? It is a collection of nodes containing information about all the files. So directory is nothing but it a pointer to the files. So many systems store millions of files, but to manage all these data, we need to organize them. That is, first the disks are split into partitions, okay, or volumes, and typically each disk contains at least one partition. So why are these partitions used? These partitions are used to provide several separate areas within one disk, and each are treated as separate storage device. So each partition contains information about the files. Then this information is kept in entries in the device directory. So the device directory records information like name, location, location of the file, size of the file, and the type of the file. So that is there in the device file or the directory file. The name of the file, the location of the file, the size of the file, and the type of the file. The directory can be viewed as a symbol table which translates file names into directory entries. So to represent about the disk structure is actually divided into partitions. These partitions can be RAID, protected against failure, and they can be used raw. Partitions are also known as mini disks, where each partition contains information about the files, and each volume contained in the file system also tracks that the file system information is in the device directory. That is, the information about each file will be kept in device directory or volume table of contents. So this is a typical file system organization, wherein the directory can be viewed as a symbol table which translates file names into directory entries. If we take such view, we see that the directory itself can be organized in many ways. So there is a directory and respective files in partition A. Again in partition B, we have the same thing all together in one disk. So a disk can be made into several partitions, and each partitions are used to provide separate areas within the disk, and each are treated as a separate storage device. So in this way, the user needs to be concerned with only the logical directory and the file structure. For these reasons, partitions can be thought of as a virtual disk. So partitions can be used to store multiple operating systems. So we can have a Windows operating system in one partition and the Linux operating systems in other partitions, and we can start them to boot. That is the basic advantage of partitions. We can store information about files, we can boot different operating systems, we can run more than one operating systems in different partitions. So next is the type of file systems. So accordingly, from Solaris point, We have seen the different access methods so far, and what are the operations that are performed on a particular file. Okay, so but systems frequently may have different file systems. Like Solaris may have TMPFS, which is used for memory based volatile file system. And next, it may also have CTFS, which is used for contract file system. Then it may also have LOFS, which is the loopback file system, and UFS, which is a general purpose file system. Okay, so these are the file system which are possible in different uh, systems. And which are the operations performed on a directory. We can see that these are the operations. One is search for a file. So we may be able to search a directory structure to find the entry for a particular file. So in order to search a particular file, we need to find the directory structure and the directory entry for a particular file. Okay. And then we may also be able to create a file. Okay, create a file, and new files can also be created and they can be added onto the directory. That is also possible. Okay, then there is also a delete file option. Delete file option wherein the a file which is no longer needed can be removed out from the entry or removed out from the directory. So the next kind of operation is the listing a directory. So when we need to list the files in a directory and the contents of directory entry for each file in the list, we use this operation, listing a directory entry. And next is rename a file. So because the name of the file represents the contents to its users, the name of the file must be changeable when the contents of the file changes. So we must be able to rename a new file whenever we want to change the version, or maybe it is a read-only version. We need to be able to change it to a different file name, and the same thing has to be updated in the directory entry. And next operation is rename a file. That is the same thing applies as I told just now. Traverse the file system. So what is this traverse the file system? So we may wish to access every directory and every file within a directory structure. So it is good to save the contents and structure of the entire file system at regular intervals. So why this is needed is because it's like a backup copy in case of system failure. We can have this kind of file system stored so that later we will come to know from which file, from which directory was it restored, what is the date it was accessed. All these things can be made visible if we are trying to have a backup of the file. Okay, that is the basic advantage. Next, so these are all the operations which are performed on a directory. Next is about the directory organization. So there are different ways of directory organization, but basically, as we know, the directory is organized to obtain the efficiency, naming and grouping. That's why we need the directory organization. So why this kind of directory organization? Okay, so efficiency, in order to locate a file quickly, depending upon the different kind of access methods or access schemes, we can find a particular file in the directory very easily. So it may be a single level directory or maybe a hierarchical directory or a tree structure directory, depending upon the different kind of schemes for defining the logical structure. We can locate a file quickly. So that's why we need a directory to be organized. And naming. So it will be convenient for the users to say that from this directory name we have these particular files located. Okay, rather than with a particular number or so as located in the hierarchy. So third, if, important benefit is regarding grouping. So there is also logical grouping of files by the properties. So it's like all the Java programs will be in one particular group, all games will be stored under one particular group. So that's why we can have a directory, because we are going to save one in one directory all the similar related files, right? So this grouping mechanism come into play. So the benefits are efficiency, naming and grouping. First, about the single level directory. So this is a very simple directory structure. Okay, very simple directory structure, as there are no subdirectories and there are no subdirectories which will be created. Very simple directory structure, single level directory, no subdirectories are created. However, all the files that contain are contained in the same directory, and this is easier to support and understand. The single level directory has got limitations. However, when the number of files increases or when the system has more than one user, it becomes a problem. Since all the files are in the same directory, okay, they must have unique names, right? They must have different names, and it won't allow two or files directories to have the same name. Should have a different name. So naming problem. And if two users call the data file test, then the unique name rule is violated. That is, should have different names. Say for example, in one programming class, 23 students called the program for their second assignment program 2, and another 11 called it assignment 2. Okay, although file names are generally selected to reflect the content, they are often limited in length. That is, there may be there are restrictions for how you define the file names. You should not have these many characters, or only the special characters are allowed. Okay, so there are ways in which how the files or directories have to be renamed. So in this single level structure, because of the limitation of file names, the structure is rarely implemented, and this is quite simple to implement, and searching of the file is faster, because in this kind of directory structure, no two files will have the same name. Okay, but the drawbacks are it is not suitable for large files, and limitation of unique file name. So in this kind of structure, this is nothing but a hierarchical directory system. Here, wherein the files are grouped together to form subdirectories. There are subdirectories possible, and in this case of hierarchical file system, the root directory will point to other directories and files. Okay, in this hierarchical directory system, there are different categories like two-level directory structure or tree structure directories or acyclic graph directories. Okay, under this you have got the first thing, that is two-level directory. Uh, in this two-level directory, each user will have her own user file directory. There is a UFD, and for each user file directory or UFD, it has got a similar structure, but then it lists only the files of a single user. It lists only the file of a single user. So when user job starts or user logs in, the system master file directory search, that is MFD, is search, and MFD is indexed by the username or the account number. MFD is indexed by the username or account number, and each entry points to the UFD for that user. So let's say user refers to a particular file. So in general, two-level directory will contain the master file directory at the top level, and then the user file directory at the second level, and the actual user files are at the third level. So user can work with only her own directory, and other users need not worry about deleting or modifying files by other users. When user wants to create a file, system searches that particular file in the directory. If the same file name is not found, then it creates a file, otherwise it gives some error messages. So in this way, two-level directory can be either a tree or an inverted tree of height 2. So user directories themselves must be created and deleted as necessary. In order to create a file, the operating system searches only that user's UFD to determine whether another file of that name exists. And to delete a file, the operating system confines its search to the local UFD Otherwise it cannot delete another user's file which has the same name. So program creates a new UFT and adds an entry for it to the MFD. So the basic problem is the collision problem, that is name collision problem. Name collision problem which was there in a single level directory is removed here in two level directory, so it is easily found out from the MFDs and UFDs. And but this structure effectively isolates one user from another. This isolation is an advantage when they are completely independent, but it's a disadvantage when the users want to cooperate on some task. So we can see other kind of directories in the next slides. Here in this tree structure directory, the directory itself is a file, and directory and subdirectory contains the set of files. So there is an internal format for each, and it is same for all the directories. The commonly used directory structure is a tree structure. So tree will have a root directory, and all the files in the disk have a unique path name. And there is a path name which describes the path that the operating system must take to get from a starting point. So as you know, the path names are of two types: relative and absolute. Okay, so directory, tree has a root directory, and every file has a unique path name. This path name is a path from the root through all the directories. So in the normal user, each user will have the current directory, and the current directory should contain most of the files that are of current interest to the user. And so to talk about the relative path name and absolute path name. So relative path name, it starts from the current working directory, and absolute path name, it starts from the root directory. Okay, this tree kind of structure, this tree structure, they differentiate file and subdirectory by using one bit information, that is 0 represents file and 1 represents the subdirectory. That is the basic you can say differentiation. So initially the current directory of the user is designated when the user job starts or the user logs in, and the operating system searches the current searches the accounting file, maybe, okay, accounting file, to find an entry for the user. Again in the accounting file, maybe there is a pointer. Okay, accounting file, there is a pointer to the user's initial directory. So this pointer is copied to a local variable for that user, which specifies the initial current directory. So in this there is a path with a tree structure directory. The user can access, in addition to the files of other users. For example, user B can access files of user A by specifying their path names. User B can specify either absolute or relative path name. Alternatively, user B could change their other person's current directory to user A's directory. That is also possible. Okay, that's the basic. You can say it as an advantage also. Advantage of tree structure directory is that the users can create his or own directory, and user can access other users files by specifying path name, and the searching ID is fast and efficient, and the separate subdirectory for files is also possible, but the drawbacks are the subdirectory cannot be shared between the user, and the path is longer than two level directories, so that is the search problem. So there is an efficient searching and grouping capability. The current directory tells you the working directory, usually it is placed in the current directory. Like in order to change from the current directory, we can specify cd and the particular path name. And there are two path names which are possible in the tree structure, that is absolute and relative path. So in order to create a file which can be done in the current directory, in order to delete a file, we specify it by a particular command, and to make a new directory, we can specify by a particular command, that is mkdir, starting from the current directory. And next about acyclic directories. So this acyclic graph directory solves the problem of tree structure directory, wherein it allows sharing the directory between the two users. So as this was not possible in tree structure, the sharing of directory is possible in acyclic graph directory. At a time, more than one places. So in this kind of directories, two different names aliasing is possible. That is, if it deletes list, there will be a dangling pointer. Okay, there is a dangling pointer. So shared restriction is that the same file or subdirectory may be in two different directories. Two different directories may have the same file. That is possible in case of acyclic graph directory. An acyclic graph, it is a graph with no cycles, is a generalization of tree structure directory scheme. And when people are working in a team, all the files they want to share may be put into one directory, and UFTs of all the team members would each contain the directory of the shared files. Okay, and again, here a shared file is not the same as two copies of the file, but with two copies, each programmer can view the copy rather than the original. But if one programmer changes the file, the changes will not appear in others copy. So with shared file, only one actual file exists, so any changes made by one person are immediately visible to the other. So this is very important in case of subdirectories. And how are these implemented? Shared files are by using a link and by duplicating the information. So link is used for creating shared files and directory. A link is like a pointer to another file or subdirectory. So in case a reference to a file is made, the directory will be first searched, and a link is a logical relationship between the inode and a file that relates the name of the file to its physical location. So again in this link you have got hard link and symbolic link or a soft link. So hard link contains multiple directories entries and both refer to the same file. So when are these used? Hard links. The hard links are used only when used with the ordinary files. Whereas symbolic link or a soft link, it contains special file which maintains the information about the file, where to find the linked file. Okay, so symbolic links may be used to link directories and files in other file systems. So in our Windows operating system, you may find only symbolic links, whereas hard links require a reference count or a link count for each file, keeping track of how many directory entries are referring to the file. The second kind of directory entry type is a resolve the link, that is duplicating the information about the shared files. So why this is required? Second technique was to resolve the link, that is follow the pointer to locate the file, and the other implementation possible is duplicating the information about the shared files. So original file will remain as it is without any modification, and the basic advantage is that it is simple for traversing the file, because it is very easier to know that the shared file occupies in this location, therefore this contains this information, so on. So the advantage is it allows directories and files to be shared between the other users, but the deletion of the file is very difficult. So this is a general graph directory. General graph directory. So one problem with the acyclic graph structure is that ensuring that there are no cycles. So if we start with a two-level directory and allow users to create subdirectories, the tree structured directory will result, right? So it should be easy to see that simply adding the new files to an existing tree preserves the tree structure. If you go on adding new files, it should preserve the tree structure. However, when we add links to an existing tree, the tree structure should be destroyed. So basic advantage of acyclic was simplicity of the algorithm to traverse the graph and to determine that there are no more references to the file. So in case if the cycles were allowed, we want to avoid it, right? So similar problem occurs with the this is a general tree graph or a general graph directory structure. So how do we guarantee that there are no cycles? How do we guarantee this? So we are going to allow only links to file and not to subdirectories. Okay, links to file and not to subdirectories. So as we have seen in the previous slide, what we have seen is there is a link to the file and not to the directories. It's a general graph structure. There is a link to the file. Okay, you can see that there is a link to the file. Okay, and however, the concept of garbage collection can be used. So this garbage collection involves transferring or traversing the entire file system, marking everything that can be accessed. So this collection scheme, it determines when the last reference has been deleted and the disk space has been reallocated. So whenever the cycle exists, the reference count can be made non-zero even when it is no longer possible to refer to the directory. So garbage collection for a disk-based file system is extremely time-consuming and it is necessary only because of possible cycles in the graph. So every time a new link is added using a cycle detection algorithm to determine whether it is okay or not. So cycles are avoided and no extra overhead is incurred. That's in this manner. So this is how we can guarantee that no cycles can exist. These are the possible methods. Now next about file system mounting. So what is this file system mounting? So just as a file must be opened before it is used. Okay, a file system must be mounted before it can be available to processes on the system. So the mount procedure is usually straightforward. So mount system call is used on Linux OS for mounting the file system and unmount system call is used for disconnecting the file system. Mounting file system is used when there are more than one file system that is there that has to be used. So mounting is nothing but it's an operation that the user or the administrator perform to cause the file system on the physical storage device to appear as a part of the file system. So what does file system contain? File system contains directories and files. So in order to have another file system that has to be mounted on this particular part of the storage device, it needs to be mounted. So each file system will contain exactly one directory at the top called the root directory, and this root directory can contain other directories and files. So every other file system is mounted under the root file. Like you have got different drives in your system. So there are different kinds of file system which are being mounted. So this is the mount point. So you can just observe that the mounting operation, that is you're having the users, you have in the root, below the root you're having the users, and there are two set of users, and below Jane you have got this mounted. So you can have another file system which may be an unmounted partition. So this refers to an unmounted partition. So this is not yet mounted. If for example, if we don't have the root attached to the this users, we say it as unmounted. But here there is a mount point that is called as a root point. Okay. The mount point is an empty directory at which the mounted file system will be attached. So what is the file system here? From the users we have got two set of users, and there is a certain set of files which are to be mounted. First of all, the operating system ensures that the device contains a valid file system. So what it does, it asks the device driver to read the device directory, verifies that the directory has the expected format. Finally, the operating system notes in its directory structure that the file system is mounted. So that is the possible scheme that can be employed in this case of mount point. So next about file sharing. So sharing of files can be possible for single user or multiple user, and if you have got multiple users, the sharing may be done through a protection scheme. So the protection scheme, there will be certain set of permissions which may be given to different kinds of users, and the permissions can be in terms of reading a file or writing a file or having the read write applied to the particular file, or changing the permissions, changing the owners. That is also possible in case of the particular file. As we have seen this kind of protection schemes for a particular files, the sharing also may be done through a protection scheme. Previously, we have seen about the file system mounting. How does the mount take place, and what are the advantages of mounting? So, in case of multi-programming operating system which supports multiple users, so there will be various operations on the files, and the files may be shared by many users. So, file protection and naming is very important. So we have got R which says read permissions, and W which states write permissions, X states execution permissions, and owner we have got different kinds of group called as owner and group, and they have got different IDs for that. Okay, we have also got user IDs and group IDs as I've just stated. So if we want to clearly identify the users, there are certain set of IDs, and the user IDs will have got login credentials wherein the users can specify their login credentials and log into the system by means of authentication. And there is also group ID which identifies or it groups certain set of users. And this is an NFS architecture. So you can observe that client and server, they are trying to communicate over the network, and each of them has got a VFS or virtual file system layer, and there is an NFS client which is interacting with the RPC client stub, which moves the message to this server. So VPS is used to handle the local and remote file common interface. So why this is described is the method of sharing wherein the certain set of security issues provided, certain security features which are provided over VFS and RPC in order for communication of messages between the client and server, in order for sharing of the messages or the files between the client and server with the help of VFS. And file sharing in case of remote file systems. As you know, networking allows sharing of resources among the computers. One important resource is to share the data, but this protection of data is very important. In case of client server model, the server can serve multiple clients, right? And the client and the user on the client identification is insecure. So NFS is a standard server file sharing protocol, and we have got CIFS, which is a standard Windows protocol. So FTP is used for both anonymous and authenticated access. Anonymous access means what? It allows any user, or it allows the user to transfer the file without having any account on the remote system. So that is called as anonymous access, and FTP is used both for anonymous and authenticated access. We have got something called as distributed file system. So and the first method is users manually transfer the files with the help of FTP. So this is the case of remote file transmission. And the second method is with the help of distributed file system, in which we have got majority of or many users can access the remote file system with the help of directories and files. So to and fro communication is also possible between two users in a distributed kind of environment, wherein different computers are located in different information. They are loosely connected, and users can transfer the information in such a system. So next, let's see some of the failure modes. So all the file system, they have got a certain set of data, that is metadata, which contains the information about the file. Certain informations are prevalent for a particular file. Maybe the file may have got a certain set of uh, characteristics allowed, or certain set of permissions allowed for the particular file, like corruption of directory structures or other non-user data is also possible to be indicated in this kind of metadata. So each file will have this kind of information, and all the status of the file will be available in this metadata. So what do these remote file system do is they add these new failure modes, and these failure modes may be prevalent in the network, and may also be depicted in the server kind of systems. And this kind of recovery from failure, it can also involve the state information. So the state information is very useful or beneficial for such kind of remote file systems, because it tells you whether the communication has happened successfully, or whether file has been shared, or what is the status, whether it is in transmission or the packets have been lost. All this kind of information is given as a part of state information, and this is very useful in case of remote file transfer. We have got certain set of protocols like NFS v3, which include the information in each request and allowing easy recovery but less security. So next is about the protection. So what is this here in this kind of protection? One approach is that people have, or when the information is kept in the computer system, we usually want to keep it safe from physical damage, that is to prevent any user improper access to the kind of files, or to provide some kind of protection. And there also has to be reliability. That is, reliability is generally provided by duplicate copies of the files. So whenever one server is not able to provide the information which the user has created, there should be other servers who have to get back the same information. So that is called as a reliability. And many computers they usually have system programs which automatically copy the disk files or tape at regular intervals to maintain the copy. So file systems may be damaged, right? They may be damaged by hardware problems, or power failures, or dirt or temperature extremes. So this is also possible, and files may be deleted suddenly. And we have got different types of access, maybe in terms of read, write, execute, append, delete, and list. So read means these are nothing but the protection mechanisms or control access mechanisms. So what do these do is they provide control access by limiting the type of file access. So we need to protect a file, right? And we should not permit access to the files which are not authenticated. There has to be some control over the file. So these are some kind of protection mechanisms which are allowed for the file. It is read. You should be able to read from the file. Whoever is the owner, they must be able to read from the file, or anybody who wants access to the data must be able to read the file. But write has got specific permission, should be written or edited only by the after giving the permissions, or maybe by the owner itself. And the third kind of operations which may be controlled is which are control are execute, that is you're loading the file into the memory and giving it for execution. Fourth is about append, that is you're going to write the new information to the end of the file. Okay, that is about append. And deleting the file and freeing the space for the user, so that any other user who wants access can gain access to the same file location or memory layout. And then list, you're going to list the name and attributes of the file. So there are several operations like renaming, copying, or editing which may also be controlled. And there are many protection schemes which are provided at the lower level, and also maybe at the higher level functions may be implemented. So next is about the access control, or we can say it as a general scheme to implement identity dependent access is to associate with each file and directory an access control list, that is ACL. So this approach to protection problem is to make the access dependent on the identity of the user, that is whoever is the user has to gain access. Okay, and here in access control list we are going to specify the username and the type of the access which is allowed for each user. For example, there are three classes here, right? So we have got owner, and we have got group, and we have got public. So in this owner, he is the one or she's the one who has created the file and who has to have the access, complete access over to the file, maybe in terms of read, write, and execute. So it is given as RWX. So if it is 1.1, it says that the owner has the ability to read, write, and execute. So now in terms of the classification of user, that is group. So here there will be set of users who are sharing the file. Okay, they are group of users. This group refers to the group of users who are sharing the file and who need similar access, same kind of access. Let's say the group is allowed to read and write. And the universe, we can say that it is a set of all users in the system who constitute the universe, maybe from this part of the world. So they are going to access this information. Only India is able to access this information. That refers to public. Okay, so here we have given execute access. So it depends upon the different categories or classes of users. The specific ACLs are given. So the most common approach or most common recent approach is to combine the access control list with the more general, that is owner group universe access control list. So we can have all this, we can ask the manager to create a group, and that is say G, and you can add some users to the group, and these group are allowed to have this kind of permission. And similarly for a particular file, let's say game, can define an appropriate access. That is, if we say chmod in 761, it refers to that the owner can read, write, execute. The group can only read and write, and the public can just execute. So this refers to how we can give the ACLs for different classes of users. So, and we can also attach a group to a file. So this is the snapshot of ACL management in Windows 7 system. So you can observe that there are different classes of users here, like the owner and the guest and the administrators. We have got list of administrators, file administrators, and the real user along with the guest user. And what are the permissions for the guest? And it is also possible to edit these permissions if you are the administrator or the owner of this particular system. This is a sample Unix directory listing. Here we have got certain list of files. As you can observe, the the file owner, like who has created this particular file, that is program.c, is a staff, and it refers to all these permission. That is program.c has got read write permission for owner, and read for a group, and read for the others. And it was created or during this particular date, and what are the bytes of that particular file, how much characters. All these kind of protection schemes are available in clearly available in your Unix kind of directory listing. We just list the set of files in a current directory. You can observe all these details being prevalent. That's the end of module 4 part 2. Thank you.